Hello, everyone. My name is Farshad Fotouhi, and I serve as the Dean of the College of Engineering. Welcome to our today's Coffee with the Dean program. Quickly, we started this program about a year ago during the start of the pandemic, trying to reach out to our alumni, students, and industry partners to share with them some of the work that our faculty doing, some of the work that alumni are doing related to the College of Engineering. Today, the topic is about innovation in medicine and healthcare. We have a strong group of panelists that include faculty from electrical, mechanical, biomedical, and computer science. Healthcare and medicine is the strong activity around the college, both in research and teaching. And some of the work that our faculty have been doing in this area has led to innovation and entrepreneurship, products. And I would like to share some of that with you today. There's a lot more in this area that we don't have time to cover all of it. With that short introduction, I would like to introduce the panel, the chair of the panel, the moderator, Dr. Cindy Bear, who is professor and chair of the Department of Biomedical Engineering. And more importantly, she's an alum of the college, that she stayed here at Wayne State for a while to get to the rank of professorship. And then she left Wayne State for the West Coast, University of Southern California for a few years. And we have been very lucky to have her back here to lead our Department of Biomedical Engineering. And she will go ahead and introduce the panelists that we have today. We certainly encourage you to ask questions. We have time for the end to have you get engaged, ask questions. You can put those questions in the chat box or raise your hand. And we will have Audrey moderating the conversation at that point. With that, Dr. Burr.
Thank you, Dean Fotouhi. Welcome, everyone. We have an exciting panel for you today. I think when you start to look at what's happening in the field of engineering and how much we can contribute to innovation in health and medicine, it's really exciting. When I started many years ago, the thought of having entrepreneurship and innovation was just something we started talking about in translatable research and things of that nature. Now, the vast majority of our faculty are actually on patents. It's not just publishing manuscript, but it's also getting patents and coming up with some very innovative solutions for some healthcare issues. So we have an exciting panel. We have alum of the college. We have a current student who's going to explain what our students go through in our program. And then we also have some other faculty that are doing some exciting work as well. So again, we encourage questions along the way. Just put them in the chat. And we're going to give each of our panel members a few minutes to present what they're working on, get you excited about it, and then we can have a short discussion afterwards. So we're going to start with our first presenter, Nathan Brant. Nathan is one of our BME alumni from our undergrad program. He graduated in 2018, but during his time with us, he had two internships over the summer months, which is great for students to get in there and really start working and understand how to apply what they're learning. After graduation, he applied for multiple positions at Zimmer Biomet and was hired under the position of Quality Development Program Engineer. So this program that he was hired into is a leadership program, and he worked in 3 different 8-month rotations in various departments of quality. Those rotations included post-market surveillance, process quality, and design quality. So it fits very well with what we trained him for, hopefully. So he's now working as a design quality engineer for new products. And he actually launched a couple new products. He launched a bone plating system last year and is currently launching another one in April of 2022. So Nathan, we're gonna move your slides forward and we'll let you take over and present what you're working on.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So as stated, I'm a design quality engineer for NPI, which is our acronym for New Product Innovation. So just a top level overview of what I typically work on or am responsible for. So it's to create, review, and maintain our DHF for our devices, which is the design history file for the products we are launching. So just going through a few different portions of a DHF or things that would be included in a DHF. So you have your design inputs, which are essentially the requirements of a device. So for this example, I worked on a plate implant. So inputs would be things like plate strength, the plate geometry, the plate length. Design outputs are essentially your deliverables. So things like the design print, and at the end of it, essentially it would be the device as well. As a quality engineer, one of the main things you're responsible for is risk management. So your design FEMA, your UFEMA, things of that nature. There's also verification and validation. So I might talk a little bit about it in the next slide, but it would essentially be like, we use a screw or a fastener to secure the plate to the patient's bone. So, a simple verification activity would be ensuring that the threads of the fastener match and mate with the threads of the plate. We are also responsible for design transfer. So that's getting your print or your product into the manufacturing world, and actually getting that product to be, created on the manufacturing floor. And then finally, you go through your release of the product. After that, quality typically works through, for NPI at least, for the first 2 years or so, we work on, product issues and improvements. So if we have any complaints in the field, anything that says that there are some hazards to the patient, we address it that way with either, field recalls or improvements. And then from that point, the device becomes the responsibility of the legacy team, which at the bottom I used to do. It's the CPI team. So that would be working on the legacy product. Other jobs I had, as stated earlier, I worked in post-market surveillance. So, handling and investigating complaints and coming to a resolution on those for the root cause. Process quality, so working on the manufacturing floor, dispositioning nonconformities, scrapping product, making sure bad product doesn't go out into the field, etc. And then an example of a product that we launched in 2020, if you go to the next slide. These are just some images I pulled off of Google. So on the right is actually the cover page to the surgical technique, which tells the surgeon how to perform the surgery. So you can kind of see there's a little line on the clavicle bone there. Oh, by the way, this is a bone plate for clavicle fracture. So you can see the fracture line if you look at the top right there, and then the plate goes over on top of it and it's secured with fasteners into the patient's bone. And on the left, you can see an example of what the fastener would look like. And then on the bottom left, you have examples of what the plates are. So, you've got a few different sizes and plate geometries to line up with the patient's anatomy. That was all I had.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. It's very interesting. I have some questions for you later. So next, we're going to have Brian Mundo share our design process with you, and I'll tell you, Hussini is going to join him. She's a senior in our program, and it's very exciting to have our students involved and be a part of this process as well, or this seminar as well. Brian currently teaches in our department as a professor of teaching for courses which focus on our design projects, specifically with our undergrads. And then he also teaches an FDA course for us, which is really appropriate since he had a 2.5-year stint at the FDA as a consumer safety office with a focus on medical device inspections. He moved to private industry to work on a startup, Clinton River Medical Products, which he obtained regulatory approval for a new product to sell in the US and Europe. He then moved to Orchid Orthopedic Solutions, which is the world's largest implantable contract manufacturer, as a regulatory affairs and quality manager. He currently teaches in our department, and we're very excited to have him in our department because he does an amazing job with the students. And I'm super excited to have you guys hear the process that they go through as students, and have Tala here to talk about that as well from her perspective. So Brian?
Yeah, morning everyone. Thank you for having me here today. If we can jump into my first slide. So I'll have a couple of them, and then Tala will go through kind of what she has as a third slide. So you've seen a little bit of what our alumni can do. You're going to see what our current students are working on, our other research faculty, kind of the innovation that they're working on. But something in addition to that, not just the innovation that's coming out of Wayne State, but we also focus on teaching our students how to innovate. So I tell my students from day one, when they start seeing me as sophomores, that it doesn't matter if they have a really great idea, if they can't communicate, if they can't get that into a product that's actually going to be safe, so it's not going to harm your consumer or your user, and it's going to be something that's effective, that's actually going to do what you want it to do, then it's really not going to be something that's going to be able to help your population. So part of that, specifically in the BME department, is we follow 21 CFR 82030, which is a section of the Code of Federal Regulations. The CFR, if you don't know, is part of the FDA regulations that are out there. And we run through the very specific medical device design process. So the students are given a population, a user who has some type of ailment, some type of issue. They need to go through, they define the actual problem that's there. They define the user needs. They then run through the entire design process starting their sophomore year. They have starting as freshmen, they start learning about the design process. They have hands-on problem working. All of our engineering students do that. Sophomore year in the BME department, they come to me, start learning a bit more specifics on medical devices, how we work the design process into the medical device world, the regulations that are there behind it. How do we define our users? How do we make sure that the products that we're making work well for our users? And one of the big things that we do in the design process is work with verification and validation testing. So we don't just run through the process theoretically. Sophomore year, we're actually building, we're prototyping materials. By the time they get to their capstone, they've run through this process a couple of times, and we make proof of concept prototypes that we're actually able to test to make sure that they are both safe and effective. We work with a lot of different faculty members in the medical school. We work with industry partners, we work a lot with actual clients. So right now, one of my capstone groups, one of the students is actually diabetic. He has a continuous glucose monitor, and an insulin pump connected to him at all times, which if you talk to him, he will very gladly show you some of the issues he has and all these things. And the project his group is working on are treatments, future treatments for him, islet cell replacement, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So some of our actual clients are the students working on the own hurdles, the own problems they have, depending on, whatever diseases and ailments they have. And like I said, everything works on a very hands-on group projects. We start this from the very, very beginning. So if we could jump to my next slide, I have some examples of student work that we are currently kind of focusing on. EMG controlled prosthetics is a very big area for BME. So prosthetic arms, prosthetic legs, and having that residual limb, if someone loses a partial limb, having that residual limb, being able to control that prosthetic arm so they can open and close doors, so they can feed themselves, kind of continue on, right? Actually having some mobility in that limb. Islet cell implantation to treat diabetes is one, right? So we have kind of this huge variety within BME, within the innovation. And I pull a lot from the students for working on those. Something as simple as an assistive stair walker, a mechanical component for having a walker going up and down stairs, having those front legs being able to adjust so the person isn't tipping as they walk. And artificial intelligence and machine learning is a very, very hot topic right now. And a lot of our students in BME are interested in that. We had a group who worked on a software that was able to distinguish between full, partial, or non-tears in various ligaments just from images taken in a clinical setting. So what we'll do now is we'll transfer over to Tala, who's one of our current students, and she'll tell you a little bit about what she is doing on the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mundo. Hi, everyone. So through my time at Wayne State University, especially in the biomedical engineering program, I've had the opportunity to work on several different projects, 3 of which include the hydrocephalus balloon catheter, which I worked on my sophomore year, that's pictured on the top right, the artificial anal sphincter on the bottom right, which is actually my capstone project. And currently and most recently, I'm working on a bioreactor chamber with Dr. Carolyn Harris for hydrocephalus applications. Now, a lot of the things that Professor Mundo discussed, I actually do currently apply in my design labs now. And one of the most important things I feel like I've learned, especially with the design process, is user needs. A lot of times we as engineers feel like we have an idea of what the user needs, but we kind of have to put ourselves in their place and learn from their perspective. Like you said, one of the students who is an engineer, he kind of knows what he's experiencing and knows what he needs. Validation testing is also one of those things that I feel like is very, very important. And I've learned a lot about just through the design labs, and I'm currently applying in the lab that I'm working in right now. And then technical documents. It's not everyone's favorite part of engineering, but it is a requirement. Just knowing how to write grant papers, research documents, all that kind of stuff I feel like is crucial. And last, but most certainly not least, teamwork. Through my through the design labs and the Wayne State engineering program, teamwork is emphasized. Engineering is all about collaborative work and really working together to come up with an idea that is best for the users. And it's something definitely that has been shown in the program and I definitely use today as well. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Talia, that's great. And it's just amazing to me sometimes what the students come up with, how Brian challenges them. And when you start to see some of these capstone projects at the end of their senior year, it's so impressive. They do an amazing job. And I'm always blown away at how great the students are about really understanding the concepts and coming up with some amazing prototypes. Like they're actually doing stuff. It's pretty amazing. So moving on. We're going to have Amar Basu. He's a professor in electrical engineering, but he has a joint appointment in biomedical engineering. He's currently the director of the Wayne State Nanofabrication Facility. His research spans lab-on-a-chip systems for high throughput screening and wearable sensors for health monitoring. His consulting work with technology startup companies include Bioelectronica, Picacol, and Lexigene, along with Mobius Microsystems. And those have resulted in several patented core technologies. He took an entrepreneurial leave from 2017 to 2019, and he served as Bioelectronica's VP of Engineering and Digital Assays, and has continued to consult with the company to develop the next generation of single-cell sorting technology. In 2020, the Bioelectronica Hypercell received the SLAS Best New Product Award. He's been funded by MTRAC and the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. His lab developed TRACE, which is the first multi-parameter wearable technology for monitoring orthostatic hypotension and hemodynamics. So Amar, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Cindy. Really nice to be here today with everybody. If we could go to the next slide. So the area that I'm working on is a multi-parameter biometric wearable for remote patient monitoring. The device is called TRACE, as Cindy said. It's a wearable sensor that's worn on the earlobe. And I'll tell you more about it in just a moment, but we can start with remote patient monitoring. So this is for everyone on the call, this is a growing area. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is really a growing area. If you could I'll let you know. And yeah, here we go. Thank you. A remote patient monitoring is an area where basically doctors can monitor the patient vital signs while they're at home. So if you could just skip through a few, you can press the down button a few times. We can just show this entire slide. Yeah, just keep going there. Thank you. A few more. Perfect. So it is believed that the greatest value of wearable sensors is in this emerging field of remote patient monitoring. And so this field, it's expected to have quite a bit of growth over the next decade. Probably 60 billion is just a couple years, and it's going to grow beyond that. And this field of remote patient monitoring is being driven by 4 key areas. The first is the healthcare needs up on the upper left there. Two-thirds of our healthcare costs in the US are due to chronic disease management. So there needs to be more of an emphasis on preventative care, which involves regular monitoring of health status at home. We have an aging population. We have things like the COVID pandemic, which solidified our need for remote healthcare. And we have a growth of rural populations as well. Healthcare policies, Medicare has recently reimbursed reimbursement codes for remote patient monitoring. Our healthcare policies are expanding telemedicine coverage, and accountable care organizations are emphasizing the need for preventative health over testing-based health. Third, we have enabling technologies. Of course, everyone knows about the growth of smartphone adoption. Wearable biosensors have become more popular in recent years, as well as machine learning and AI methods to analyze all the data coming from these types of devices. And finally, and most importantly, for insurance providers who are wondering whether this will benefit or not, there are more and more clinical validation studies that show that wearable sensors actually do reduce the cost of healthcare. So by doing more vigilant remote patient monitoring at home, you can actually reduce hospital readmissions by up to 50%. You can detect infectious diseases like COVID early so that you can treat it early. So you can have things like pandemic surveillance, early detection of things like heart failure as well. So the needs right now is that we need to have devices that can provide continuous monitoring, not just once a day blood pressure monitoring, but continuous monitoring to detect sparse events like heart rate variability, heart rate recovery, cardiac arrhythmias, so that we can do trending of data. How is your glucose changing over time after a meal? How is your heart rate changing after an exercise or a walk up the stairs? Doctors also want to have medical grade accuracy, which a lot of consumer grade devices like the Apple Watch and the Fitbit watches cannot provide. And they also need multi-parameter monitoring, which provides a more comprehensive picture. So not just monitoring one particular vital sign, but measuring multiple vital signs, because that gives doctors the ability to narrow down what exactly that condition is. So next slide, please. So along those lines, we have been developing Trace, which is the wearable sensor that I mentioned to you. Trace is worn on the earlobe, and it measures 6 different categories of biometrics. And some of these are in progress. Some of these have already been done. The first and foremost is beat-to-beat heart rate. The fact that Trace is located on the earlobe, a portion of the body where there isn't much motion artifacts, it can detect heart rate with 99.5% correlation with the medical grade EKG, which is much better than what can be done by the Apple Watch or the Fitbit watch, just due to its location. We're very excited that it can measure we're testing out the ability for it to measure aspects of the cardiac hemodynamic cycle, like the duration of the systolic and diastolic periods, heart rate contractility as well, and how these things change as the person undergoes physical activity. We currently have a grant with the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to measure dizziness in older adults when they stand up. This is a condition called orthostatic hypotension, and it affects close to 2 in 3 older adults. Surprisingly, it's something that's not as well known, but it affects a lot of their elderly, particularly those with blood pressure medicines. We can measure cardiac respiratory parameters like SpO2, skin temperature for things like measuring fevers, and then importantly activity, which is how much time do you spend sitting up, lying down, walking. And if you could press the next slide button once more. And we take these multi-parameter monitorings, these data streams, and we use time-resolved acquisition and a contextual evaluation. That's what TRACE stands for. And contextual evaluation basically means something like, if you have an increase in heart rate and you have a simultaneous increase in activity, then we might be able to say the context is that the person's exercising. And on the other hand, if you see an increase in heart rate without a corresponding increase in activity, then the context may be a psychological load that increased the heart rate. So having these multi-parameter things, this is just one example of where multi-parameter monitoring can really enhance the ability of physicians to understand what is going on with the patient. And next slide, please. And I'll end with where we're currently at with Trace. We've, through grants through the Michigan Technology Research and Enhancement Fund and through Wayne State, we've developed commercial prototypes that are scalable to tens of thousands of units made using commercial printed circuit board foundries. And we've also developed a cross-platform mobile app to acquire this data and to upload that into the cloud where it can be analyzed by physicians and the researchers alike. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this in the future. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Amar. Very interesting. Next, we have Sean Wu. Sean is one of our distinguished professors. from the university appointment here, and he is a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. He's received many honors, including the Inventor of the Year Award from Wayne State in 2003 and 2006, the inaugural Alpha Award for Technology Innovation from the Engineering Society of Detroit in 2006. He was a second prize winner for the invention at the Ignite Innovation Competition for a cardio sound blood pressure meter from the state of Michigan in 2018. He co-founded SenSound in 2003, and then in 2015, he founded SignalWise, which is a private company to provide disruptive technologies to tackle complex noise and vibration issues. He's currently the co-founder of CardioSounds, which develops, manufactures, and sells technologies and products related to physiological monitoring, and that's what he's going to talk to us about today. So, Sean?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Wu from Mechanical Engineering Department. It's an honor for me to describe to you CardioSounds LLC, a spin-off company from Wayne State University, and what it does in healthcare industries. CardioSounds LLC was created through an Amtrak fund in October 2018. Its founders include Kevin Wittrup, Sean Wu, Yung Xu, and Gaurav Kapoor. Kevin is a venture partner of RSVP Ventures, based in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and Adelaide, South Australia. Dr. Xu is a professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and Dr. Kapoor is an assistant professor in Pediatrics Department, the School of Medicine at Wayne State University. CardioSounds LLC was acquired by a VC and relocated to Ann Arbor in November 2019. The company's goals and objectives are to develop, manufacture, and sell products related to physiological monitoring. The specific products include, but not limited to, CardioSound blood pressure CSBP meter. Today I'll focus on the first product, namely CSBP meter. CardioSounds aims at providing accurate care for patients to perform non-invasive, continuous blood pressure measurements, monitor accurate respiratory disease progression, and monitor fluid responsiveness, volume state, and congestive heart failure. It will extend to telehealth and home health care to monitor congestive heart failure disease progression and hypertension management for the general public. Now let me describe briefly the application of CSBP meter, which was developed for ICU users at Children's Hospital, Michigan for patients or infants of 2 weeks up to 18 years old. It has been adopted there since 2017. CSBP meter includes 3 small sensors, 2 for listening to heart sounds, and 1 for monitoring ECG signals. Results are displayed on the screen of a monitor in real time. The second is a refined version of CSBP meter, which is extended to adult patients. The 3 sensors are now combined into 1 unit that can be taped to the chest of a patient. We're currently going through a clinical trial in the ICU of Henry Ford Hospital. Originally, this clinical trial was scheduled in 2020, but COVID-19 pandemic has significantly delayed its inauguration. Here are the actual results collected from a 6-year-old patient, which included the first and second heart sounds, the systolic and diastolic blood pressures, heart rates, and the date, time, and condition of the measurement results in real time. In order to protect the privacy of a patient, we use Kevin as a test object. As data acquisition starts, you can see the first and second heart sounds, known as S1 and S2, which are shown on the top 2 lines of waveforms. The third line waveform indicates ECG. The fourth line depicts a cardiac cycle or blood pressure waveform. They are typically represented by 2 phases, namely systolic and diastolic, which can be further divided into 5 sequences, PQRST. These are shown in the 4th line waveform. The patient's heart rate, Systolic blood pressure and temperature are shown on the right panel.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wu. That's very interesting. So next and finally, but not last but not least, I guess we should say, Sorin Draghici is going to present some of the work he's done with bioinformatics data analysis software. These tools are currently being used by over 12,000 researchers around the world. He is a co-inventor on 4 patent applications in the field of bioinformatics. As I mentioned, we have a lot of faculty who are on patent applications who have been awarded patents, which is amazing. Currently, Dr. Draghici is the head of the Intelligent Systems and Bioinformatics in the Department of Computer Science at Wayne State University.
Hi, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so this is some information about our spin-off from Wayne State. Company is called AdvaitaBioinformatics. The aim of the company is to shorten the time to discovery and improve patient care. We do that by developing software for the analysis and interpretation of high-throughput genomics, proteomics, and other types of omics data. For those who may not be familiar with this, as you know, every cell in our body has the same genes, right? That's why they look at DNA tracing and use it in crime scene investigations. However, our body is composed of many, many different organs. And the differences between those organs are given by the way these genes are expressed. They are expressed at different levels in different organs. So those are the differences the differences in gene expressions are those that create the differences between organs, but also those that determine our response to disease, our response to drugs, and so on and so forth. So what we do, we develop software that takes those measurements and help life scientists and doctors interpret those. Currently, we have customers in 3 different categories. We have academic institutions, core and service providers, as well as some pharmas. The map gives you an idea about the distribution of these customers around the world. Most of them, as expected, are in North America, US and Canada, and Europe. But we do have customers as far away as Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Southeast Asia. Let's go to the next slide, please. So some of the tidbits that could be mentioned here, we were selected as among the 50 companies to watch in Michigan twice, actually in 2019 and in 2021 as well. We have 3 patents that are awarded, others in various phases of prosecution. The best year so far was in 2009, was 300% growth compared to the year before. The worst year so far, not unexpectedly, was 2020, when most of our customers had their labs shut down because of the pandemic. Nevertheless, we managed to grow as well. The accomplishment that we are most proud of, we're able to use our software and our methods to identify right at the beginning of the pandemic in April 2020, a drug, an existing drug that was could be used for severe cases of COVID-19. So this is not for everybody at home, but only for the severe cases that end up in hospital ICUs and on ventilators. And that drug reduced the mortality by 44%. Our software can also be used to direct treatment, for instance, in cancer patients. In many types of cancer, at some point the tumor develops some resistance towards a drug, and one needs to change the drug. So our software allows the doctors to identify the drugs that would be most efficacious in a particular type of tumor, in a particular type of patient, and at a particular stage during the patient treatment. So that's about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to learn anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Sorin. Okay, so we're going to open up for questions for our panel. We do have one in the chat, and it's for Nate Brant. Nate, someone noticed that you have an MPI and a CPI program, but is there also a team that does advanced development?
Yeah, so yeah, I see it in the chat. So Alan, could you maybe define advanced development or what you mean by that? I think if
Alan?
you're referring
I don't know if he can.
to, yeah. I mean, if you're referring to like launching new devices, that's essentially what the NPI team does. If you're talking about, you know, maybe research or along those lines. Yeah, so that's mainly, so the question was if there's a team that does advanced development, and then that means in terms of longer term innovation, maybe 3 to 5 year horizon. So yeah, essentially the way that our company kind of works is that we have many new products and a bunch of patents that might not be being worked on at a certain time. So in a time frame, like let's say that we've got 20 projects that are NPI that are being launched. So as we work through that certain project and launch it, then that team becomes available to launch a new product. So as we launch them, you know, we go back to, okay, what other projects do we have coming up? Have we secured a patent? Do we have somebody to work on that? And it's pretty much all the teams work on that.
Okay, great. I had a question for Amar. In terms of your trace technology, you know, we've done some work with sports and athletes using instrumented mouth guards, and it's a lot of work to make sure that the instrumentation is cared for properly, right? Like when you hand these to someone, a consumer, or let's say you hand it to a patient, an elderly patient or whatever, what types of things do you have to, like, what kind of things are in place to make sure that you're getting good data back to the physicians then? So, you know, battery life, things of that nature. Could you talk about that a little bit, like those difficulties or things you've addressed?
Yeah, Cindy, that's a really great question, and that's actually one of the challenges that we will be encountering in this upcoming study. Like I said, we're doing a study on 100 older adults for measuring, using the trace sensor to measure orthostatic hypotension. And one of the first things that we've had to think about is like, well, this study is going to be done in 4 different places, and there's going to be different staff members putting the devices on the individuals. And one specific thing for this device is that we found that, you know, the placement of the sensor actually makes a difference in the blood flow patterns that you end up measuring. And so we don't want to have the users to have to put it on in exactly the right place at every single time. That's just not feasible. So you have to develop normalization algorithms to basically account for the fact that the sensor placement could be slightly different in each time. So I mean, like, I think the general message here is that make it harder for the designers, but make it easier for the users.
Right, exactly. It has to be almost like plug and play for them, right? Like it's got to
Exactly.
be really simple. So,
and a lot of times that ends up being some sort of normalization procedure that's done on the signal processing end of things, or even in the hardware end of things. You can do various types of differential measurements to account for that.
Right, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Nate, we had another question for you regarding what drew you to the quality organization in your company.
Yeah. So nothing specifically drew me to the quality organization. It was more so when I applied to different positions, I applied to the development positions, design, I applied to quality. There were some manufacturing positions. And out of all of them, the one that I chose was a rotational program. And it really made sense. Graduating college, a lot of people have issues, even after graduation, identifying what they want to do, what interests them. So I did a rotational, so I have 3 rotations. I could choose which areas of the company I wanted to work in from a quality perspective. So instead of going into a department for, let's say my other option was a design engineer, development engineer, I didn't have a rotational option. I would have worked for that department. And I could have worked, I could have transitioned to another team within the company. But the way that this specific job was set up really appealed to me. I got to explore the different organizations, get a lot of experience, and then finally settle on NPI after my 2 years, because that's what I found that I liked the best.
Where did you do your internships when you did the internships while you were in an undergrad? Where was that with Zimmer as well?
I did not intern with Zimmer. I applied to a lot of medical device companies. You're kind of, restricted in terms of location in the Metro Detroit area, right, in terms of, local internships. I ended up working for an architectural company in Southland. They actually worked on layouts of hospitals. So my job as an intern was to talk to the nursing and surgeons at the hospital we were working at, and laying out the way that they wanted their ORs and their prep and recovery rooms to look. So I essentially found an opportunity in a different field of engineering that still applied to my degree. And then the year after that, I actually worked for a temperature control company. And the reason that I did that for BME is that they actually worked in maintaining the environment in the OR rooms at hospitals as well as the pressure and other things.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Brian and I have talked about is trying to increase the internship opportunities for our students, because we have a lot of students who want that experience. And that's another way to get a feel for what you want to, what focus area you want to be in when you graduate. And so those internships are so important for our students as well to get that experience and really understand how industry or the medical field or whatever works, and if it's a fit for them or not. So we're trying to increase those internship opportunities for our students. So Brian, there's a question for you in terms of how do you like working for regulators as compared to the company doing product development? I mean, it's very different, right? It's like both sides of things. So which one did you prefer?
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't really have a preference. Both of them kind of had that pro to them that I was working for public safety, or working to kind of help people, right? So at the FDA side of things, you're making sure that people are following the regulations, you're making sure that they're making safe and effective products, and that they're actually, the goal of the company is you want to push to make sure that they're going to help people, and on the other side of things, working for product development, working on the quality side at a company, that same aspect was still there. I knew that I was making product that was actually going to go, a lot of implantables that were actually going to go into people and very much help them. Some of the cons for those, though, was working in industry it was just a lot of hours. The startup company that I was at, and then once I was at Orchid, working 60 hours a week, which, was just a large amount. The FDA kind of on the opposite spectrum of that, working for the federal government, everything was very, very slow paced. If there were issues going on at a firm that we were inspecting, things just moved very, very slowly. Now that I'm in teaching, it's kind of a nice balance of both, because I work with my students in all the capstones and I get a lot of that innovation. I get a lot of every semester we're pulling new projects. And like I said, it can range from a very mechanical aspect of building an assistive walker that's powered by actuators to islet cell implantation, which we're focusing on biomaterials, we're focusing on immune responses, we're focusing on rejection, we're focusing on all these different areas. So I very much try to bring a little bit of everything that I've learned from working on the regulatory side, working on private industry, and kind of give students a little bit of feel for that. Because with a lot of them, they don't have that experience. So giving them a little bit of what each one of those is like, some of the pros and cons that are there, helps them decide where they want to go as well.
Yeah. I think if I were to say the perfect design teaching professor for our department would have this background, it's kind of your background. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have you as the person who's guiding our undergrads through this process, because you really have had both sides of things and can relate and, you know, share those experiences with you or with them. Sorry. So,
and
anyway,
I can say with that too, starting at the FDA gave me a really unique insight into why the regulations are in place. And I find that in private industry, there's not a lot of people, but there are still people out there who don't necessarily understand the reasoning for the regulations. And I mean, everything boils down to being safe and being effective. And understanding that reasoning is really something that on the private industry and with the students, I try to teach them the whole purpose behind all of that.
That's great. So do we have any more questions from the audience?
Let me ask you a question, because Cindy, you're asking everybody questions. Can you share with us in your department what are your faculty working on? Because again, your department titled Biomedical Engineering. So what are your faculty doing and your recent hires and activities in the department?
Yeah. So within our department, we have areas of concentration. And so we have biomedical imaging, we have tissue engineering and biomaterials, we have injury biomechanics, we have computational biomechanics. So we have various areas, and then we have core faculty in those areas, but then we also have other faculty that are in other departments within engineering and the School of Medicine and other departments across the university that have joint appointments or secondary appointments with us in biomedical engineering. So we have really a very broad group of people working on things. Within our new faculty, we just hired Jitao Zhang. He's working in biomedical imaging, and he's doing some great work partnering up with Dr. Mir Mohammadi, one of our current faculty, looking at developing different imaging techniques for cancer detection and birth defects and things of that nature. So he's hit the ground running. He's doing a lot of great work right now, and I really look forward to what he's going to bring to our department. He's very motivated and doing a great job out of the gate. We have a new hire that's going to start in January who does work in rehabilitation, specifically looking at assistive devices for individuals that are either stroke or for various reasons have mobility issues. And so he's going to set up a full gait analysis lab in our building, which we had many years ago. And now we're bringing it back. He's going to do some great work. And we already have undergrad students who are excited and have reached out to him to work with him. So we're pretty excited about him joining our department. In terms of tissue engineering and biomaterials, we have a couple individuals who are working on developing cardiac tissues. Dr. Maya Lam, she's doing some valve development stuff where she does a ring stacking method to grow vascular grafts in the lab. And she's getting some really interesting results from her work. We have Harini Sangoragavan, who's doing some work in nerve tissue generation and things of that nature. So she's doing a lot of work, and she has a couple PhD students who are getting close to the end. So we're very excited about seeing what their results are for their dissertation work. We have Uli Kluth, who's doing some work in diabetes technology. She's looking at doing different filtration devices for insulin to help prevent any kind of reactions and localized inflammation. So she just received a very large, she scored very high or very low, as you get, for those of you know, low is better for NIH funding, but it looks like she's going to get a huge grant, $3 million to look at some new technologies for her research. So that'll be very exciting. So look for some amazing things to come out of her lab in the next few years. She does a lot of tedious work, and she's very meticulous about how she approaches things. So I'm sure she's going to have some great results. Trying to think who else. Who did I miss? We have some computational biomechanics work coming out of Dr. Kavdia's lab, where he does modeling to determine things like, does vitamin C help you and decrease inflammation and things of that nature. So he's got some interesting papers that have come out recently. So lots of great work going on. And like I said, we also have our relationships with like Dr. Basu and Dr. Wu and just various people within the college and beyond. We were trying to expand that even more. We have a bold moves that we're working on and engineering and health. So look for things to come out of that effort, where we're going to join with a variety of people, not just within the college, but across the university to really advance health innovations in the future.
Thank you, Cindy. Let me ask Sorin also some similar question, especially your recent NIH funding with Susan Arsalan in computer science. Can you very briefly tell us what that's about?
Yes, yeah, thank you for the question. So this is research relating a method that we developed in the past few years that is able to identify subtypes of diseases. So what we have done, we have taken the molecular data coming from these assays from various tumors, and we're able to identify various subtypes based on the molecular structure. So even though these patients are categorized in the same, under the same label, a certain diagnostic, they have vastly different survival profiles. So we can tell the people who are going to survive longer and the people who are going to maybe have a worse prognosis. And that would help the clinicians identify the people who need the most aggressive treatment right away versus the people who do not need that treatment. And sometimes the treatment can do a lot of damage as well. And if you don't need it, it's better not to have it. So our work, yeah, so this recent grant, my colleague, Dr. Aslan Turk is the PI, I'm a co-PI, and is focusing on this particular approach, as well as the ability to learn from one type of cancer and transfer that knowledge to a different type of cancer. So in particular, we are looking at trying to improve the treatment in prostate cancer. In general, prostate cancer is not very aggressive. Many people live many years with it and die of other causes, but in some situations it can be extremely aggressive. So we try to understand how to predict the outcome, and also what are the drugs we can take from other types of cancer that could be useful for these very aggressive prostate cancer situations based on the molecular phenomena that take place in the tumor.
Thank you, Sorin. And Amar, can you tell us a little bit about Dr. Gozday, who joined your department recently from Microsoft, and also the work that maybe some of your other colleagues are doing related to medicine and engineering?
Absolutely, yeah. So as you know, Professor Wu mentioned that Yang Zhu is a professor in electrical engineering who also does a lot of work in wearable sensors. He's one of the people who helped invent the some of the technology in cardio sounds. Yang Zhu also works on implantable neural probes. We have, as the dean mentioned, we have a new faculty member, Gozde Tuchenkwaglu, who worked at Microsoft Research in Europe, who joined our group, and she works on nanoelectronics. So she's developing next generation neuromorphic computing devices, which basically feeds and supports a lot of the AI and machine learning at the hardware level. Now, what that means is that, you know, one of the issues with the standard AI and large scale models right now is that they're very energy intensive because they're done at the software level. A lot of matrix computations, they're done in these big data centers. And so these neuromorphic computing devices can potentially reduce the energy consumption by an order of magnitude or better. So that's one of the areas that she's working on. We have other faculty who are interested in health monitoring as well. We have a group of faculty, Dr. Al-Hawari, Dr. Sunis, who work on devices and wireless communications. And some of these technologies can be applied for wearable sensors and health monitoring devices, although they're not working specifically on those projects just right now. And then finally, like Dr. Abhilash Pandya, he's been working on surgical robotics for many years. He has a really amazing Da Vinci surgical robot in his lab. And he works on various types of algorithms for haptic feedback and making it easier for the surgeons to remotely conduct surgeries. So I think that's all I'll mention right now.
Are those used for training as well?
You could ask Dr. Pandya about that. The one in his lab is not used for training, but I do think the Da Vinci systems in the real world are are used for training. The one in his lab is used primarily for technology development.
Yeah. As you can hear with Dr. Basu, Dr. Draghici, and of course Cindy and Dr. Sean Wu, biomedical research and engineering and medicine are very closely tied, and is in our chemical engineering department, industrial engineering department, looking at it, improving quality of service in medical setting, medical environment, taking advantage of the newest technology. So we are looking at different angles, and we have collaborators not only in our School of Medicine, but also with VA hospitals. We have Henry Ford Health System, Karmanos Cancer Institute, and so on. Our faculty is scattered across all of these disciplines and collaborating. And of course, some of their work leads to not only publication, but also provisional patent and invention. Again, we have quite a bit of work to be in this area, and hopefully in the future we can discuss that with you. If you want to learn more about these areas, please don't hesitate to contact some of our panelists here today directly, or reach to Chris or Claire or Audrey. We can definitely connect you with those ones. And I also wanted to invite you to, if you're physically available to attend, I'm not sure they're going to do it virtually also or not, but this year, December 3rd, we have our spotlight on design for our freshman students. And that is our BE 1200, which is our first introduction to engineering course. That is, students are working on some different projects, as well as our biomedical engineering students. And we're going to host that in our new STEM building, which we have now a space for engineering and as well as biomedical engineering and a couple of other departments. Beautiful space. We're going to have the students to present along with their parents to be there to see what they're doing. That is on December 3rd. And also, as Dr. Bird mentioned, as we are trying to close this skills gap with the industry, one area that you can help us with, provide internship and co-op opportunities for our students. In some departments, they are working on counting those type of works towards a degree. And again, providing those opportunities, we're really making our students be ready, hit the ground running, instead of spending time to get trained when they graduate and so on. So we have many ways that we can collaborate and work with you in really closing that gap when you're physically partnering with us in helping us in those. Any last questions that you may have at this point? If not, I want to thank you, Cynthia, for running the show for us this morning, and also all the panelists who spent time with us. And more importantly, I want to thank our student here today that shared with us what she's doing. And we are very proud of you, Tala. And again, thank you for attending. And stay tuned for our next Coffee with the Dean, which I can tell you right now the date and the topics yet, but I'll let you know as soon as we finalize that in the very near future. Thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful day.